The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hello and welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. My name is Dan Rylance. I'm co-host. Cheryl Hentz, my co-host, will join us momentarily by telephone. In preparation for the April 3rd election, we will be beginning to interview candidates for the school board. And tonight we have two with us. We have Karl Loewenstein, who is seeking a second term, who will be on for the first half hour, and then we will go with Jared Erdmann, a new candidate, for the second half. Cheryl, can you hear me?
I can, Dan.
Okay, so we're going to start. Do you want to start with questions, or do you want me to?
Either way, I guess I can, if you want.
Yeah.
Hi, Karl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Thanks very much for being there tonight. I'm sorry that I can't be. You're completing your first term on the school board, and the school board recently voted for board members to sort of self-evaluate yourselves. Can you kind of give us an evaluation of what your performance as a board member has been in the last 3 years?
Well, actually, my term has only been 2 years,
Okay.
But regardless, I think that unfortunately in the last 2 years I've had a lot of trouble being reactive. I think we all have, and I was kind of going back and reading this material that I put together before my first campaign, and it was all about planning. And of course, we still need to do that, and I still say the same things, and in the past 2 years, we haven't been able to do that. And so I feel, first of all, that I think sometimes we lose focus, and I lose focus in the smaller issues and when we need to focus on the larger ones. That's something that's important to me. The second thing that I think is important, and I feel as though it's been a struggle for me, is how to engage in really productive dialogue on the school board. I think we've had some really good discussions in the past couple of years, but they could be better. And I think one of the ideas of this self-evaluation is that we can sit back and say, well, what can we do better as an individual and as a person and as a school board member? And as I said, one of those things would be trying to focus on the big issues in particular, and trying to focus on the long term, because it's so easy to get bogged down in the smaller details. And in particular, it's really easy to get caught in the finances, when it seems to me that what I want to do and what I want to continue to do is focus on education. And that kind of gets lost, for good reasons at many times, but we can't forget the other things. We can't forget the students as we go on.
Right. You said, I think I heard you correctly, saying that it's sometimes difficult to have meaningful dialogue, despite the fact that you guys have had some good discussions about things. What do you see as kind of the roadblock or the hurdle there to not being able to always have meaningful dialogue?
One of the things that I think has been really good was a suggestion of Dr. V. is where we've moved to these less structured collaborative workshops. And I know that for people who are watching on television, it's a little hard to follow, but as a board, it gives us a chance to work in pairs or in smaller groups where we can sort of quickly go back and forth. One of the problems with the boardroom as it's set up is that when you have a dialogue with 7 people sitting in a row, each person politely waiting for the other 6 to speak before they speak again, you have a hard time sort of generating, kind of having the generative discussions that you need to be creative and innovative face this. So one of the things that I think has worked really well, and I'm very happy with, is these new structures that we have, where we have kind of a more informal discussion, and one of the group members then summarizes that for the public on the camera. But I think that's a tool that has worked very well to be productive in terms of coming to meaningful conclusions as we go on.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Cheryl and I both talked before about why a self-study. And we can't come up with any other elected board that we can think of that has ever exercised a self-study.
Well, this is the idea of Mr. Dito. He has worked very hard on this, and actually it turns out that quite a significant number of school boards across the state of Wisconsin do this sort of thing, and the standards which we adopted and put in as part of our policy are drawn from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. Okay. And they ask a sort of a basic set of questions. Are you being productive? Are you supporting are you supporting board decisions? Are you staying on task? Ask questions about civility. Are you always being civil to your when there are disagreements? And so there's actually kind of a nice structure that comes with this policy that was drafted by the Wisconsin Association, and it will help us direct that conversation. So it won't be, I was worried when we had these first discussions it would be kind of free form and it might get accusatory, but the way it's structured is really think about yourself. And think about yourself in relationship to the group. Don't talk about other board members, but look at your own position and the ways you've talked about it over the last few years. And I think that can be productive when you're self-reflective on the business.
Now, when is this self-study going to happen?
Well, the policy calls for one self-study a year that we decided would be in April.
Of this year?
It will start in April. In fact, we discussed this in some of our policy and governance meetings, and we decided it might be really productive to do it, say, about the last week of April, so that when we have new board members who have fresh ideas and who have come to us from the outside, that we'll have a discussion amongst ourselves about what we could do better as individuals, and then we'll have some new ideas from the outside, because we often have, in the April elections, we'll have new board members like we will this year. So we scheduled it for late April so that we'll have, and do that every year. And there's a clause in there that suggests that if we like what's going on, we can do it again in either November or December. Okay. But basically it's to be an annual process where we would start with a survey and then discuss those surveys in public, so that we'll have that.
Cheryl, what do you think if you were a new school board member elected in April and you were going to conduct a self-study 3 or 4 weeks after you were on the board?
Well, I think as a new member coming on, that would be rather difficult. I don't know when a more appropriate time might be, perhaps later in the year, but for a new board member coming on, I think it will be challenging.
Well, and I think our vision would be more that it would be educational for a new board member, because if we say, well, we look at the last year and we've made some mistakes, we haven't, we've worked on the wrong work, or we've gone in directions that might have been not as productive as you'd like, and so the new board member would be part of that discussion. And as I said, in our discussion, we thought that new board member might not be self-evaluating as much as the rest of us, or the currently serving boards, but would again bring us that new perspective as someone who's watched us, because it's very good that people who are running for the board come and they spend several months watching us work, and sometimes can see things that we can't see as we sit and look at each other in that boardroom.
Over the past month or so, Cheryl and I have had 3 or 4 board members on, and we've learned a lot of things. We think there's some tensions and stuff, but I'm going to go kind of personal for a minute, and if you don't want to go with this, just say so. But I sort of think over the past couple of months, Board President John Lemberger and your fellow academic colleague has become a distraction for the board. I can give you some examples if you don't, but if you'd like to respond to that initially, I would appreciate it.
Well, what I would say is that I support John completely. I think that he's been faced with a very difficult situation. He's been put in some very difficult circumstances. I think he's sometimes made some decisions that were, maybe not the best, but I think as a whole, he's done a fine job, and he does, as board president in general in the boardroom, what he does by summarizing discussions, by sort of wrapping things up, by keeping us moving, I think he's done a fine job. Personally, I feel like he's become a new target in terms of the ways that people look to criticize the school board, and that his small mistakes have been magnified beyond where they really should have been.
Let me give a couple examples and see. He had a resolution that he introduced to sort of appoint himself sort of an investigator of closed meetings or leaks or something. I went to the meeting, and he couldn't explain why he introduced it, and in the end he even voted against it. All of the TV people were there that night. Wasn't that a distraction for the board?
Well, yeah, I think in a way it was, and I was opposed to that resolution when it came along. But at the same time, when I thought back about it, it was a resolution that introduced a conversation that I think we needed to have in public about how we work as a board, about how we function as individuals in closed meetings and out of them, about how we respect one another. And that's a conversation that I'm not quite sure how you generate, again, as a board, in public without a resolution. There's really not a good structure for that. And in a way it was a distraction, but I also think that those are important. That's part of why we're having a self-evaluation, that we don't need a resolution to have that conversation. We can instead do this on a regular basis and put these things together. And I think that's one of the things that, I mean, that's been one of our failings, is we don't have a good structure for working out kind of procedural and questions about how we work together as a board. So,
my second example was his secret letter of recommendation for Superintendent Bigot for another job. He refused to make it public, and this went on for a couple of weeks. Wasn't that a distraction as well?
Well, the resignation of the superintendent is a distraction. There's no doubt about it. But as an employer, I would challenge anyone to say, your trusted, valued employee and friend comes to you and says, you know, I need to look for another job. Please keep this private, and please give me the help that I need. As a employer and as building a culture of trust, John Lemberger did the right thing. And if you want to have a place where your employee can come to you and tell you that, and so that you can be aware and be planning about that, you have to keep that confidence and help out.
Let me just jump in here, Dan, for a second. I appreciate what you're saying, Karl, as far as having that trust, but there's a trust that you as school board members have with the public as well, whether it's the voting public, the taxpayers, what have you. And this is a little bit different situation than a private sector employer-employee kind of situation. My feeling is, and, you know, I'd like to hear your response to this, my feeling is that, you know, he has his duty first and foremost to his other school board members and to the public who elected him to the position that he holds. He does not have a responsibility necessarily, and if he does, it comes last to Dr. Vigut, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, let me say that I think that those are not different things. I mean, to imagine the turmoil, John Lemberger coming out at a board meeting and says, oh, guess what, the superintendent's looking for another job. Could you imagine the problems that would generate in terms of getting business done, in terms of having a conversation on the things that we need to have, the real work that the school board needs to do? I mean, if you imagine what the other option there is, you're looking at chaos. And it's a hard situation to manage. I agree, and I think that there are lots of forces at work here, but I think when you think about the other side of that, well, he should have gone public with it. He should have gotten it out there for the taxpayers or the public or anything else. What would that have done to make the school district work better? How would that have served the students? How would that have served the teachers? How would that have served the community to be having a discussion about, we don't know what the superintendent's up to, he may leave, he may not leave, we don't know when he's going to leave. I don't see how that would have made anything better to have done that.
It would have certainly given you guys more time to find somebody.
But we didn't know he was leaving. He didn't know he was leaving. He started looking for another job. We don't know when he was going to get one. He might not have. He might have changed his mind. But to make that public at the very beginning, you're essentially firing him on the spot and saying, look, we're not going to do anything else again, and we're not going to be focusing on the budget or education or anything else. We're going to be worried about whether or not the superintendent is going to leave us.
A letter written by the president of the school board, though, is the public record.
I'm not sure what the situation is there. I haven't thought about that issue at all. So I
Well,
haven't
he
really
wouldn't
had that.
release the letter, but CISA 8, which ultimately the job he took, released all the letters of recommendation. Okay, just quickly, the third one. Why does John continue to bait the Oshkosh Northwestern at his talk during the school board meetings? What's the point of that? Isn't that a distraction?
It is a distraction, but on the other hand, I guess I don't really have a problem with that because the Northwestern isn't going to print a response.
He could go down and write a letter and turn it in.
And we spend a lot of time in this community and a lot of effort. And part of the reason we're looking for a new superintendent is because of the tensions with the newspaper in town. And I don't think there's. I mean, I think that the president of the board is perfectly willing, should be in a place to point out that the Northwestern is inaccurately reporting things.
I find it unbelievable that the Northwestern is partially responsible for the superintendent leaving. Is that what you're saying?
I would say that part of the reason the superintendent is leaving is the climate in Oshkosh.
Okay.
And part of that has to do with the continuing misreporting of information about the school district in the Northwestern. And that's the truth of our community.
Okay.
And I mean, if you look at the way the newspaper reports about the school district, it's different than how it reports the city. It's different than it reports, other activities in town, and it's rarely, and it's very mixed. And I think that it makes things. We spend a lot of time saying, "Uh-oh, what's the Northwestern going to say now?" They're going to second guess the board's decision again. They're going to criticize. They're going to misreport the story. They're not going to give all the information. They're going to, something else is going on. So we spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time thinking about, how do you respond to a Northwestern that often, I think, unfairly reports events in the school district.
I think it would be extremely difficult for one person, to report accurately everything that goes on because there's so much going on. And you've even said earlier, sometimes we don't know where we're going. I think would be a tough beat to follow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually have great respect for Adam Rodewald. We have a new reporter I haven't actually talked to yet. I think Adam does a good job. But at the same time, if you look at the headlines over stories, you say, well, why is the headline cast in those terms when the story doesn't actually reflect the nature of the headline? Why are there, why are there missing pieces of information or not reporting what the administration has told them and reporting what the critics of the administration has told in those stories?
Well, welcome to the real world of being an elected official.
Absolutely. And
it goes with the territory.
It goes with the territory. And I think at the same time, that's why I say, okay, John, point it out at those meetings.
But baiting them to come down to the meeting to testify, to present their plan B, come on. I mean,
I just kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh well.
I'm sorry.
You're on the other end, and I can see that. But that's not a normal way to deal with the media is to do that. And you're going to need the media's help on the referendum.
Absolutely.
And so you better,
And I think people work very hard to work with the Northwestern and their editorial staff,
Sure.
and they're very open to Adam. He's always in that building interviewing people. There are no closed doors when it comes to the press, but there are some frustrations about the final stories that appear in the paper, and I think John reflects that, and has decided that. Again, taking his own initiative to talk more about that.
Okay. Well, thank you this is not an easy topic, but for the board members, we've talked about lack of leadership on the board. We've talked about distraction, so I thought that I would run those by.
I think it's it's a reasonable conversation, and again, those are the kind of things we want to talk about. I have a feeling that in April, when we talk about self-evaluation, we'll say, well, what is the best way for us as board members and as president to deal with these kind of issues, and if we're self-conscious and we're reflective about that, maybe we should do better next time. Perhaps there is a better response, and we'll talk about it and work in that direction.
Okay. Cheryl, you still there?
I am.
You're on.
Okay. Karl, are you supportive of some kind of penalty clause, if you will, to deter future administrators from leaving in the midst of a contract?
I don't know. I would say I would say I would be skeptical of that. And the reason I would say that is that we, for example, bring lower pay than other surrounding districts. I would say that we're going to be providing fewer benefits than other districts. And so if we're going to be increasingly, I don't want to say punitive, harsh on prospective employees, we're not going to get the kind of people that we might want. If we're the only district that's going to put these kind of materials in there, if we're the ones who have the lowest salary, the lowest benefits, and the clause that says if things don't work out, we're going to penalize you, we're going to be digging ourselves in a deeper hole of getting good people to come and work in Oshkosh. And there's not a glut of people out there who would want the superintendent's job and would be good at it. And so, let's make it a worse position to have. I'm not sure that that's a good idea. Maybe there's a better reason for it out there, but I'm skeptical. But I'm willing, as I often am, if there's a good argument to be made, I can change my mind. I haven't heard it, and we haven't talked very much about it. So I'm skeptical now, but you can convince me otherwise. I'll change my mind.
Okay. Because it does seem to me like certainly when a superintendent accepts a position, or any administrator for that matter, I mean, they know what the pay is, they know what the benefits are before they accept. And if they're doing due diligence at all, they know what the climate is here. I mean, I know it's a rough community. It is different in some respects than other communities. And I'm not sure why that is. They have a lot of the same problems and challenges that other districts have, but I think we are a little bit unique in that we do have some additional challenges here that superintendents and administrators have to face. But if they're reading blogs, if they're reading the newspaper, if they're talking to people in the district at all before accepting the position, and I would like to think that somebody, as part of doing their homework, would be, they know what they're going to be dealing with, don't they?
I don't think you know what you're dealing with until you take the job, honestly. But to that extent, I mean, you're right. But on the other hand, how would having some sort of penalty clause in the contract change that?
Well,
except that it would reinforce the notions that this is a bad community to come and be superintendent in.
Well, it might keep them sticking around at least until the contract is up. I mean, because now, on top of everything else that you guys are dealing with, which is enormous, now you're having to look for another superintendent and go down the same road that you just went down 2 years ago.
And honestly, I think if there had been a clause in the contract, he still would have left.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Let's proceed with this just a little bit. Let's say I'm a finalist for the superintendent of public schools in Oshkosh, and give me your best shot as to why I should come here. What's good about Oshkosh that I should come here?
I think Oshkosh is a high-performing community. Our schools, as much as we talk about the problems, our schools still do great. Okay. Students come out well prepared. I think we found this out. One of the things that I've done is sort of build some collaboration with the university, and we find out that Oshkosh students perform better in math and English at the university than students from surrounding communities. So we still provide a really great education. And I think that we have a very large segment of this community that's very supportive of education, that needs to be motivated and tapped into. And I also think that we really have a great staff that works very hard and has done very well under really not as good of conditions as surrounding districts. So I think we have, again, those things I think we have very strong parts of this community that can be tapped into. I think we have great opportunities because we train our students very well now, and that can really still improve. And the district itself is done some great work with the resources that they do have.
Steve Dito, when he was on the show, said that there are like 13 or 14 vacancies right now for superintendents in Wisconsin. So it's going to be a tough process to get a superintendent.
It's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm very, I'm very upset that Dr. V. Good is leaving us. Yeah. Honestly, I would hope that if things go successfully in April, he might reconsider. Yeah. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm going to go with a couple of quick questions here, Cheryl.
Sure, go right ahead.
The budget, you voted down the budget last week. You didn't want to cut positions. Where are we at on that? What do you think what do you want in the next budget?
I think what we need to do is avoid cutting positions this year, which means the salary freezes and a variety of and all the other all the other things that that people will be coming up with. But I think the thing that got lost in this process, and part of the reason there was so much drama in the past few weeks, is because we lost the view of collaborating, right? The administration hadn't done as good a job as they could have talking to the staff, talking to the teachers, laying out the issues. I mean, clearly they mentioned this in the past, but it wasn't, sort of made clear in a way that I think could have been better. And I think that the meetings, we had very productive meetings with the staff over the last few weeks, our administrators did. It shouldn't have been 2 weeks, it should have been a month. It should have been 6 weeks or 2 months. And if that process had started sooner, we would have seen less of this angst and anger and trouble in the community. Because I think in the end, the teachers said, we'd rather see our pay freeze and not have experience increases in these other things in order to keep our class sizes small, and because that's better for the students.
What's the timetable for the new budget?
As far as I know, I don't know. I don't want to say. I have not talked to anybody. I have some meetings tomorrow, but I don't have any details at the moment.
What do you think of netbooks? Are they coming?
Netbooks are definitely coming. I guess I would say I tend to be a bit of a skeptic about technology as a savior. I think technology can be a great resource and a great addition, but it's expensive. The netbooks themselves, the upkeep, but even more important, figuring out how to use them well in ways that really make your students benefit. And I think, the things that Dr. Goodluck quoted in the paper, I mean, those districts spent large amounts of money on training to make that technology work. So I think it's a solution that we'll be turning towards because it can save costs in the long run. It's expensive to get it started. And so
you don't have the money right now to get it started.
And we'd have to find the money someplace to do that. And it's not going to happen under the budget as it stands without, going to the community for extra help.
What's your role to push this passage of the yes vote on the Oaklawn on April 3rd? What are you going to do?
Well, we're, as a board member, you're sort of in a bit of a bind because as a board, you're not allowed legally to support a referendum.
Okay.
As an individual, of course, you can advocate for the referendum as much as you can. I have not started the process as much as I should, but I do want to get out and start going to some of these community meetings. They're meeting the Oaklawn, the Oshkosh for Oaklawn committee has been working. Huge amounts. They have public meetings all over the place.
They're well organized,
at
aren't
schools. They're well organized. They're passionate. They're smart. They're doing some really good work. And when they ask for help, I want to help. And as a board member, I can't really lead that discussion, but I can really be part of it and help out in any way I can. And I'm here today to say, as a citizen in Oshkosh, we should vote for that referendum. We should support a new school on the north side of town.
Cheryl, you have a quick question, 30 minutes, 30 seconds?
Sure. Karl, no matter what happens with the Oaklawn referendum, do you feel that some kind of redistricting is important? And if so, what would be your suggestions on how to do it?
Well, I think, I think that Oshkosh should, in the end, commit to redistricting on a regular basis, every 5 years, and that the river would not be a barrier in that process of redistricting, regardless of what happens with the Oaklawn referendum, to recalibrate our community and say that is not a boundary that's permanent. It's only one that moves so that we can best utilize the space that we have as a district.
Okay. We're out of time. I want to thank you. Good luck. Cheryl, stick with us. We're going to be right back with Jared Erdmann and the second half of this show.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. the Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
I thought it went fine.
Well, welcome back. This is the second half of the program, and I'm glad to introduce Jared Erdmann, who is candidate for the school board. I'd like to welcome you. You're a newcomer. We haven't seen you in the ballot before. So why don't you just take a few minutes and explain who Jared Erdmann is?
I'm a parent. I'm a business person.
Okay.
I'm a member of the community, and I have just recently, within the last 5 years or so, come into my own as far as government goes.
Okay.
I never really had a whole lot of interest before that, and it's just sort of one of those things that over the last 5-6 years has grown for me in interest and in how much I pay attention to it.
Sure.
And truth be told, I became involved in the school board process because of the impending referendum for Oaklawn Elementary. And
you have children at Oaklawn?
Yep, I do.
Yeah. And what age are they at school?
I have a fourth grader and a kindergartner.
Okay.
So
you're well aware of the problems at Oaklawn, more than most of us.
Yeah. That's what got me into it, and I went from there, just watching the process and seeing that this was something that I thought I could offer something to, as a process I felt I could offer to. I like to think creatively, come up with creative solutions to problems, and I make decisions every day. I'm a manager at Mills Fleet Farm here in town.
Okay.
And
my favorite store.
Is it?
It is, seriously.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. I do all my stuff there. I really do. I get my tires changed, my oil changed, and I go shop, and I come back and get my car, and I drive away. And
now you can even get your school board members there.
Well, I never thought of that. You have a little booth?
No, I don't.
No, I'm kidding. All right, so you kind of looked at this. You're involved because of you're a parent of Oaklawn. What do you think? I mean, this is not an easy task to be on the school board. What's your observations about how it works well and how it doesn't work?
One of the most frustrating things that I see as I watched the process is, I feel very strongly that leadership comes from the top, and without that strong leadership, it's very hard to get anywhere. And what I see is a lack of unity, maybe. I really feel that in a group setting like a board of any type, whether it's the Common Council, the school board, you name it, the Congress,
right.
Okay, I feel like everyone has their opportunity to make their case, okay, and if I'm a member of that group and I've made my case, but I've failed to convince you that my way is the right way,
sure.
Then I've failed to do that. But if the group's decision in the end is to do either this or this, my stance should be that I am with that 100%. I may not have agreed with it in the beginning, and I may have argued against it,
sure.
But now we as a group, we've made this decision, and I should be with that. And I just, I don't know, I want to see a really team-centered environment, a group that works together and comes to a common solution on something. I enjoy doing that.
You're not seeing that right now, is what you're saying.
I don't feel like I am, no. I think it could be tighter knit. I think that's what it needs to be. It needs to be a close-knit group that can work together to find a solution.
Why isn't it closer knit?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I'm going to run this by you. There are currently 2 members of the UWO faculty on the board, and there's a third one running, one of the persons you're running against. Do you think that board's too academic? That's maybe one of the problems?
It worries me. It does. That's something that I thought about. I think you need to have a variety. You need to have people from different walks of life, different places in life, even different times in life, in order to get a really well-rounded group that is going to think of everything.
They seem to approach this, and I used to be an academic, so I'm sort of criticizing myself, but the process of an academic is listen and study and listen and study and listen and study, but when it comes to really taking that and synthesizing it and going with a plan, for example, they don't have a strategic plan yet, so I kind of share that.
The funny thing is, too, that information is all there. It's been 6 years since the district did a study of all the facilities with a firm, who gave them their recommendations, what they felt they should do. They gave them the strong points and the weak points of all their infrastructure. And that information has been sitting there and has failed to come to fruition. And that's one of those things that I don't know if you can live without that. You need to do that. The infrastructure needs in the district are probably one of the things that worry me the most. In fact, may have been the turning point for me when I sat in one of the board meetings back in November or December, and I listened to Randy Johnston talk about the
He's
needs.
head of facilities.
Right.
Okay.
The head of facilities. And he went through the needs that are out there in our buildings. And it's ridiculous. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars worth of maintenance needs that have been neglected and are still being neglected because the money's just not there. And I don't know how we solve that. And we need to fix a revenue gap in order to do so. And I think, unfortunately, the revenue gap for probably decades has caused this problem. A lack of revenue to keep up with those needs, or a lack of spending the money to keep up with those needs, maybe.
Cheryl, do you want to step in?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Jared.
Hi,
Thanks for
Cheryl.
being there tonight. Many candidates get involved because of one issue. You're certainly not alone there. But, of course, you'll have a plethora of issues to deal with if you're elected. What assurances can you give the voters out there that you will give all the issues your all once the Oaklawn issue is resolved?
What I would say is ask anybody that works with me or knows me. When I get into something, I throw 100% in. In fact, you could probably call my wife and ask her. She would tell you. She would probably like to have me back sometime soon.
Yeah. What's the largest budget that you've ever really dealt with?
Wow, in dollars?
Sure, yeah.
Wow. Nowhere near a school district budget, let me tell you that. In my business life, what I deal with generally is a budget of hours compared to dollars. Obviously that's the retail world. We're nowhere near a school district budget, let me tell you.
But you have worked on budgets.
I do it every day.
Okay.
On a weekly basis. You got to make it work. That's the name of the game. You got to be profitable. And that's something that I brought up to a couple of groups that I've talked to. I think we need to kind of look at our school district as a business, and I don't know that we do that, but really that's what we are. We're in the business of education, and the parents and students, those are our customers, and so we need to somehow balance the needs and keep the customers happy and getting the product that they're supposed to be getting. And I don't know if we're maybe necessarily doing that. That's kind of a different way to look at things maybe than have been in the past, but maybe that's what we need.
Cheryl, keep going if you want.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Well, Jared, one of the things that the school board recently did was, as I'm sure you know, they passed a new policy that they're going to, at least once a year, more if they want, sort of self-evaluate themselves. What do you feel about this self-evaluation? Do you see merit in it, or is it just kind of a lot of busy work and sort of a distraction from the bigger issues that need to be tackled and worked on?
You know, I looked over that information. I looked at the evaluation itself that Mr. Dito had brought to the rest of the board, and I like it. And I think if it's something that they stick to, it can be a great tool. But it's like anything else in life. If you come up with a great idea and don't follow through with it, it's not going to be worth anything. But I think if the board follows through on this evaluation and does a true and honest evaluation based on the questions that are there, I think it could be very helpful. There are some very good questions in there, and there are actually some questions in there in regards to the topic that I was discussing earlier with being unified and presenting that unified leadership, in members being on board with decisions that they make as a group and that sort of thing. But I think it has good merit. It just, like I said, needs to be followed through.
Mm-hmm. See, I fear that it's going to become kind of a distraction. I think that board members ought to be able to kind of self-evaluate themselves all the time. They certainly read the newspaper articles, and I'm sure that they read some of the comments that citizens are saying. They hear from citizens who pick up the phone and call them or stop them in the supermarket or a restaurant. I think they have a pretty good idea of how they're performing and whether or not they're being, fair to their fellow board members, being fair to the public, whether or not they're doing a good job or not. I'm just not sure that something like this, and I looked over the materials too, I think they look wonderful, but I'm just not sure that it's really necessary. I mean, I think we should be self-evaluating ourselves all the time.
Good point. Maybe it's just something that looks really pretty on paper, and that's what it does.
A lot of things look good on paper.
Isn't that the truth?
But when you try and put them into practice, they're not always the best.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things also is that in those materials, I'm sure you saw, some of the questions or areas being critiqued on are how well the board deals with controversial issues openly and honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you had to evaluate this board on how well it deals with controversial issues openly and honestly, what would you say?
Boy, I think some of those issues have been confronted recently. I don't know. That's kind of a tough question, Cheryl. I don't know.
Okay. Well, one thing that I don't think was handled very openly was the letter of recommendation that John Lemberger wrote for Dr. Vigut. I know you're not on the board. You certainly had nothing to do with that, but you must have an opinion as to, whether or not he did the right thing by keeping it secret from his fellow board members or not.
I have to say I've had a lot of conversations with Dr. Lemberger, and he seems like a very nice guy, from our conversations. I get along with him really well, but would I have made the same choice? I don't know. I don't think I would have. And that's just me personally, but I don't think I would have. Again, that's that close-knit unity that I was talking about, and I don't think you can achieve that by keeping things from each other. If that's something that I think maybe you need to share, you need to be aware of, and like any employer, in my position, in a management position, I don't hold it against anyone to go out and try to better themselves, to try to move up in the world. That's human nature. We all do that. There's no need to hide it. I'm not going to, just because, if you work for me, just because you will go out and look for a better paying or a better status job, I'm not going to punish you for that. I'll probably applaud you for that. Good for you. I hope it works out.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we all move on after time. That's life. So.
You have children in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just move forward a little bit. And let's say you've been on the school board now for 7 or 8 years. Okay, you're really old. Your hair is gray now because of but, your kids say, Dad, you really made some good improvements for us when we were in school. Could you list 2 or 3 improvements that are important for you, for your kids, that you want them to have if you're on the school board?
Facilities is my number one.
Okay.
I think we need that. Sooner or later, we're gonna have a really big problem. We've got great test scores. We've got great teachers in this community. We've got great students, and all those things lead to a good reputation. But at the same time, if your facilities are falling apart, where does that leave you? So I think that's something that definitely needs to be fixed. Beyond that, I think technology is another big one. I think the Northwestern had their say.
You want the netbooks?
Well, I think we need something.
Sure.
And, I know the district is moving in that direction. Could we move a little quicker? Sure, I think we could. I think we need to find a way. And I don't know that we're going to do that just by digging in our own pockets, and the pockets of the citizens of Oshkosh. I don't know that we're going to find enough change to do it that way. Maybe it's through some creative grant writing, which has already been done, maybe on a grander scale. Maybe through some kind of community partnerships with different organizations and businesses that we could get something like that done.
One more, Cheryl, and I'll go back to you.
Sure.
Okay. If you're elected, you're going to be on the board that will pick the new superintendent of schools, right?
Yes.
What are you going to tell these candidates as to why you think they should come to Oshkosh?
Why they should come to Oshkosh? I think they should come because they want a challenge.
Okay.
I would say to them, what can I offer you? I can offer you an opportunity to really better yourself. There's a challenge ahead. No different than the challenge that was facing Dr. Vigud when he came. And it's nothing small. It's not small shoes to step into in this town. There's a lot of criticism involved with that position, and there's a lot of work to be done. And I think it's going to take someone who's a strong leader, who has creative ideas, who can motivate people and get the job done. But I think that would be the biggest thing for me. If I was looking at myself and I were vying for a position such as that, I'm going to look for a challenge. I want a challenge. I don't want to be bored and just wander through life. I want to have something to keep me interested and intrigued and moving forward.
Would you go down a little bit on the lineup for a new superintendent? It seems to me that there's a group of superintendents in lower positions that move their way up to higher positions and keep moving them. Maybe we ought to do what the Cubs are going to do this year. They're not going with the top paid people. They're going to build it from the bottom. Maybe there's some department heads or some people that are not in a superintendent role yet who would really bite on your idea, come here for a challenge.
I think that's absolutely possible. Some of the things, first of all, I think it's going to be important for the board to get out and, whether it's through forums or just, getting in touch with PTOs and community groups, but finding out what the community is looking for. Number one, let's find out what kind of things the community is looking for. We already know what we're looking for, and let's put all that together, and then let's go out and do some looking. But I certainly wouldn't rule those people out.
I'm worried that
the
search committee or the people that you hire, they're only going to bring you
the bread and butter.
That's right. They're going to the high-paying ones.
Yeah.
They're not going to be at the mid-level.
Yep. And I think that's an important thing that would have to be, the firm's going to have to be told that, what we want is for you to go out and find the right candidate for us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that this person is a superintendent now. It doesn't mean that, they're coming from a community of this size, so we want them to move to this size. It's about finding the right individual, and whether that person is, filing papers in an office, and they have this great potential that's just completely untapped. Sometimes those people can give you more than anyone else ever could. Because they've been untapped their whole life, and never knew that they had that potential.
Cheryl?
Sure, thanks. Jared, the Oshkosh Teachers Union recently unveiled their endorsements of 3 candidates for the upcoming election. You were not one of them, and quite frankly, that may bode well for you, because there's an awful lot in the community who, they don't like to go with what the teachers union says as far as candidates and issues. But I am curious, I was also kind of surprised to see endorsements this early on. I guess because there's not a primary, it doesn't really matter, but it did strike me as being a little bit early. Can you kind of tell Dan and I and the viewers a little bit about what kind of an endorsement process this was? Was it in-person interviews? Was it questions that you responded to by mail? What did they have?
They had a questionnaire that was sent out to all of us with, I'm going to say it must have been around 10 to a dozen questions.
Essay type?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, essay type questions that we responded to. And then we had an opportunity to come into their meeting and have a few minutes to talk about ourselves and then take open questions from the group. And that was pretty well the end of it. They ran through the 5 of us, and then they went about their regular business. So I thought it seemed like a pretty good process. Everyone had an opportunity to say their piece and answer questions.
Okay. Dan, did you have any?
No, go ahead for
on
one
that
more.
issue, or?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I kind of want to go back to the superintendent position for a little bit here. What is Jared Erdmann looking for in the next superintendent? And the reason I ask this is because when Karl Loewenstein was on, he said that one of the reasons he feels that Dr. Vigut is leaving is because of this element in the community that is very negative, of which he specifically pointed out, the Oshkosh Northwestern. I just feel like anyone coming into this position, they kind of know what they're going to be dealing with. They have a good sense anyway. I would hope that they would be able to know that coming in. Don't you think that they should?
I would think so. I mean, it can't be that far-fetched of an idea that in most school districts a superintendent is a target. I would assume that is probably the case. Maybe a little more extreme in some communities than others, but I don't think it's a whole lot different. I would imagine you're the person who's running the show. You're going to be the target. In business, if you're running the show, it all falls on your shoulders. And you take the burden of whatever happens, whether it's good or bad. It's no different in this world. Whatever comes, good or bad, it's going to be on your shoulders. And I would think that anyone vying for a position like that would assume and understand that comes with the territory.
See, and I don't even think that they've been that unfair to him, really. I think they've treated him pretty fairly, the Northwestern with Dr. Vigut. What specifically are you looking for in a superintendent? What kinds of qualifications do you want to see? And the second part of that then is, would you be in favor of some kind of a penalty clause if not just the superintendent, but any administrator leaves in the middle of the contract?
Let's go with the first part. I was processing for a second there. What am I looking for? I think those things that I talked about. Someone who is motivated, driven, who wants to get something done. Someone who can sit down and look at what we need in our school district and say, yeah, that's a challenge I want to take. I want to help you get that done. Let's make that happen. Somebody, we could look at a track record. Maybe it is important to look for someone who not necessarily was the top person in their district, but maybe somebody who stood up to a similar challenge. They had a big challenge and they were the one within their district who tackled that and made it happen. I think that's again, you're looking at a quality of a person rather than their history. I think that's important. Where you've been can only say so much about you. It's more about what you've done. As far as the second part of your question, you got to help me out. I think I forgot it.
A penalty for breaking contract early.
Penalty for contract, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's out of line at all. I really don't. I think if you are going to sign on to do something for a period of time, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. You're making a commitment to a community, to the students, and I don't think there's anything wrong with a penalty clause. It's no different than, it's just giving a proper notice and saying, hey, I want to move up, so just so you're aware, at the end of my contract, I am going to be looking for something. Did you do that, Cheryl?
Still
No,
share,
I
Cheryl?
didn't. But I am still here. I didn't do that, though.
Oh, it was just a little noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would add one more thing to your list, Jared. I would say, someone who's got some stick-to-itiveness, because, we've all heard the expression, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That doesn't mean the tough get up and leave.
Right.
And I just feel like, Dr. Vigut is bailing. I don't blame him for wanting to better himself, if he can better himself. I understand that it's a tough job that he has, but I also feel like, he knew when the board agreed to renew his contract that that he was not all that enamored any longer with the position. And so I'd like to see someone who's got some stick-to-itiveness and wants to see things through, not just bail when things get a little tough.
I agree. And, going back to your comment about, when his contract was renewed, that kind of goes back to my comments earlier that there's nothing to be ashamed of in going out and looking for that next thing in life and just being honest about it and saying, hey, I'm looking for something. I don't know that there would have been anything wrong with saying, geez, I am looking for something else, so let's consider that, I don't know.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
You're a newcomer. You got to run citywide. What's the Jared campaign plan? What are you going to do?
There's not much to it. I want to talk to people. I'm going to get in touch with PTO groups and get out and talk to them, and community groups, and just talk to them. And my philosophy is if you like me, if you like my ideas, if I seem like a common sense guy who's going to make the right decision, then support me by all means. And if you don't feel that I'm that person, that's all right too. I'm okay with that. This is just something that I feel like I can contribute. I feel like I can make a difference, and so I'll give it a go.
Okay. Got a minute left. Why
Okay.
don't you turn the camera and just kind of summarize you're talking to a voter and tell people why they should consider voting for you.
Okay. I am a common sense, decision-making person. What I do for a living every day is just that. People present me with the information. Once I have the information, I make the informed decision. It's something I'm very accustomed to doing. I will be the first person to admit that right now I am inexperienced in this particular area, but I am ready to learn. I am very much a researcher. I will find the information, I will seek it out, and I will come to a decision that is in the best interest of this district. That's my bread and butter. That's what I do.
Okay, I want to thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming on. I wish you the best. And we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to say, you keep your eye on us because we have our eye on Oshkosh.